A massive gas field in Iran hit by a reported Israeli strike. Tehran then responding with strikes on Qatar's largest gas facility. Well, energy has been a casualty of the U.S.-Israel war on Iran from the beginning. But could things be getting worse? Well, Shon Hiatt focuses on global energy at the University of Southern California. Before we dive deeper, Shon, I just want to begin our conversation by asking, how surprised were you by an Israeli attack on this gas facility, given all the hand-wringing that we've seen over energy?
I was actually surprised about that. I thought they were going to limit the attacks to only military facilities. The problem is when you start to attack energy assets, as Iran said, that they will then begin to attack other energy assets within the Gulf region. The problem is when you begin to attack energy assets in the Gulf, which supplies over 22% of the world's gas and petroleum products, right? This could going to lead to a larger increase in energy costs globally, and it'll be sustained. If the damage is severe, it may take 6 months to a year for these assets to come back online.
Okay, let's get into that in just a moment. Let's first take a look at exactly what happened today. Video from social media showing smoke billowing from a production facility for Iran's South Pars natural gas field. That's part of the largest gas field in the world and is split between Iran and Qatar. Israeli media report that Israel's Air Force attacked the facility. The South Pars natural gas field is offshore, located near the coast of Azuluya and Iran's Bushehr province. The region is central to Iran's energy sector and accounts for around 70% of the country's domestic natural gas supply. Well, a few hours after that attack, Iranian missiles struck Qatar's Ras Laffan industrial city, causing extensive damage. That's according to the authorities there. Ras Laffan is a crucial energy hub for Qatar. All right, back to our guest, Shon Hiatt, a business professor at USC's Marshall School of Business in California. Shon, how important is South Pars?
Well, it's extremely important for Iran. This is like their major gas development, and this is what's used to basically generate electricity for most of the country in Iran. They use this natural gas. So I guess strategically, since the Israelis attacked it, I guess their idea was to try to take down some of the electric grid in Iran by cutting off the gas supplies for the gas generation.
It's interesting. Obviously, this plays a critical role in Iran. And there's another discussion, we may touch on this a little bit later, about targeting energy supplies for a country. We've obviously seen this a lot with Russia and Ukraine. But we sort of want to look at sort of the global connections here as well, especially this focus on energy. One thing that we noticed is that oil prices jumped. I'm curious why when we see a natural gas facility struck here.
I believe twofold. One is also the substitutive effect. If there's less natural gas on the market, what do you use instead? Will you go to bunker oil or diesel fuel to generate electricity? But the second, which I think is most probable in terms of the market reaction, is that this was the first attack on an energy facility, and it's not going to be the last. And so I believe what the market is now pricing in the risk of attacks on oil and gas refineries in the Gulf.
I thought that Iran had already attacked oil facilities and oil fields to this point. Do you mean from the U.S.-Israeli side, or does this represent some sort of new step?
No, both. I mean, they have attacked, but they haven't gone directly and destroyed them. For example, Saudi Arabia just put on their Ras Tanura, I believe is the name of it, the Ras Tanura refinery. After a drone attack, it wasn't that severe. That is a 550,000 barrel a day refinery. It's very huge. My assumption is that now that they're going after energy assets, I think it's the risk now is that Iran may use whatever left of their drones or missiles to try to take out the rest of these large refineries in the Gulf.
Rising energy prices are obviously the biggest consequence of this war outside of that region. Let's have a listen to what American Vice President J.D. Vance had to say about that.
We recognize this is an issue. We are fighting against it, and we promise that when this conflict draws to a close, when this operation draws to a close, we're going to see those energy prices come back down to reality, because that's what the president promised to do. He delivered an energy-dominant agenda. It's made us much more secure in the face of these things. But yeah, we've got a rough road ahead of us for the next few weeks, but it's temporary.
All right, it's temporary. The message there from J.D. Vance, obviously a politician working for the Trump administration, which is prosecuting this war. You know, the U.S. has said it was aware of the Israeli plan to attack the facility. There's also reporting from the Wall Street Journal that Donald Trump has said he doesn't want any further strikes on energy facilities. I want to first ask, when it comes to gas, which was hit here, very technical question. Does the U.S. even feel the pain of gas prices like the rest of the world? As far as I understand it, it's relatively decoupled from global prices, so it's not going to be as harmed. Is that true?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. In terms of natural gas, we are already exporting the maximum that we can export based on our current LNG facilities. And so the prices of natural gas are not going to go up anymore. We're at about $3.15 a million BTU. Which is way less than what we're seeing globally, especially in Europe, where we've seen some of the prices jump up to $50.
Would the U.S. even profit from, obviously, higher demand for gas? I don't even know what capacity it has to satisfy that.
Well, no, they can't. They can't even export anymore. We're at the maximum ability to convert our existing natural gas reserves into liquefied natural gas for export.
Shon, I want to get your take on this. This is a tweet that Trump posted on social media earlier today, or perhaps this was truth, I'm not sure. But I found this on Twitter, saying earlier today that, you know what, he should let other nations clean up the Strait of Hormuz. This is, of course, the very important bottleneck, essentially, in the Persian Gulf that has essentially slowed to a crawl. There's really no energy supplies leaving it outside of Iranian. And obviously, it's one reason why prices are rising so much. Anyways, Trump says he should let other nations clean up the Strait of Hormuz. It's their problem. We just talked about gas, Shon. It's not true that the Strait of Hormuz is their problem when it comes to oil, right? The U.S. is also going to struggle from what happens in the Strait of Hormuz, just to be clear. Is that true?
Well, yeah, so we have higher oil prices here in the United States. It's almost doubled. We're at near $100 a barrel, and for WTI, Brent crude is well above that. I saw it peak today at one point at $115 per barrel. And what you're seeing is actually a large regional disparity in oil prices. In East Asia, for example, in China, the oil price is $150 a barrel. And that is because they're so dependent on Middle Eastern oil and any other drops of oil that could be on the market from Russia, that the price is now $150 a barrel. And this is why China has now ceased all exports of their refined fuels. South Korea has also ceased exports as well. And Japan, as the government has also said, we are no longer going to be exporting any of our refined fuels because we need to conserve these fuels.
You know, some of our viewers may be wondering, why can't the U.S. just produce more of its own oil or satisfy the demand that's out there right now? It is a major exporter, right? Why is it subject to these prices if it's got so much oil?
Well, we do have a lot of oil, and I think one of the issues is the infrastructure. So although we do have a lot of oil in the ground, a lot of reserves, you have to be able to take that, run it through a pipeline, and get it to a boat. And right now, in the prior administration, they stopped all pipeline building. And so we didn't have much infrastructure. Now, the pipeline building has recommenced under President Trump, but the problem is it takes time. The other thing as well is our refineries are running pretty close to max, though they do have some more capacity to refine fuels and put them on the market. We just had an announcement happen last week that a new refinery will be built in Texas, the first one in 60 years. So it looks like there is now more reinvestment in this oil and gas infrastructure, but it's going to take some time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. And something that J.D. Vance said that it is temporary. Well, it's all about what's your definition of temporary. So if these assets in Saudi Arabia or Bahrain or Qatar are very much destroyed through drone attacks, like I said, it will take 6 to 12 months to get them back online. And then the other question is about the Strait of Hormuz. How much transit of these goods from Kuwait or Iraq will be able to get through or allowed to get through? If they are constrained, we will still see curtailment of petroleum and natural gas on the market, and the prices will remain elevated until there's transit through the Strait of Hormuz.
All right, let's get away from the U.S. and back to that region. Iran has made energy a focal point of its counterattacks, as we've discussed, since the beginning. But it was very displeased when its own gas fields were targeted. Iran's president condemning the attacks on Iran's energy infrastructure on X. He says this will complicate the situation and could have uncontrollable consequences, the scope of which would engulf the entire world. Iran essentially threatening to target even more infrastructure if its own is attacked again. And again, we should point out that this natural gas field serving largely the Iranian population, serving electricity production, as you've said, that's quite serious for that country. Iran has already gone after energy targets. It shut down liquefied natural gas production, essentially, and the oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. What else can it really do to really damage energy infrastructure there? How much worse could it get?
Like I said, it could get a lot worse if they directly target with large missiles the refining assets in the Persian Gulf. I think that's where they could, and here's why. Okay, so the Middle East supplies about 22% of the entire world's jet fuel, right? And also middle distillates. So let's just look at this. Europe is heavily reliant upon what we call middle distillates. These are like the heavier, longer carbon chains of fuel. So think of diesel fuel or jet fuel, right? That's what we consider the middle distillates. So Europe imports 25% of all of its middle distillates from the Middle East, right? And jet fuel, 40%. Why? Because Europe has shut down refineries over the last few years, and so it's reliant more on these imports. That's a lot of jet fuel to make up. We are also feeling this here in California, which has been following the same track as Europe in terms of shutting down refineries. We also import a lot of jet fuel on the market globally, and we've seen the prices skyrocket here in California. So what does this mean? It means we're going to see transportation costs start filtering into the economy in terms of inflation. Almost everything moved and shipped in globally relies upon diesel fuel and jet fuel. And when those prices go up, like in this case, go up, 50%, 100%, right? We'll see a trickle in effect of about 35% is what we're going to see already in the United States. In Europe, I would say in the next few months, you'll be seeing, if these prices don't go down, an increase in the goods in the shelves of grocery where there's high volume. That's where you're going to see the first, as well as other products.
And that, again, is based on where we are right now. But you said earlier, and I'd like you to clarify this again, that Iran could do worse, that what it's done so far has been sort of minimal in terms of affecting actual energy infrastructure. Again, what has it done so far? And then what has it sort of left unscathed? I mean, obviously a lot is bottlenecking because of the Strait of Hormuz. And we've seen oil production that's been closed in certain oil fields because they can't get it out, from my understanding. What have they done, and what, in theory, could they do?
Yeah, you're 100% correct. So far, we've just seen the curtailment or the bottleneck, as you say, of like natural gas and oil, meaning they're just not producing. And so once this is resolved and they allow for transit, we could see this fuel back on the market within about 2 weeks. All right. That's if there's no damage to the facilities. If there's major damage, and again, they go after and use their missiles to blow up, say, some refineries or LNG facilities, right? Those take months to rebuild. And the estimates I could give you, depending on the damage, would be between 6 months and a year to rebuild. Okay. So then you do the math. How much natural gas do these facilities put out? Or how many barrels of refined fuels do the refineries put out? And and you subtract it from the market, and you'll be able to actually price that in and figure out what the price is going to be for the next 6 months to a year.
Okay, Sean, so who's going to come in and sort of fill that gap right now if about 1/5 of all fossil fuel energy that's globally provided is suddenly gone? Surely there have to be other switches that can be turned. We've seen, obviously, Russia, some sanctions lifted there. Is there anything that can really be turned on in the near or midterm that can start to provide that kind of relief?
In the next 6 months to a year, we will not be able to replace all of those barrels of oil or refined fuels or liquefied natural gas. That will not happen. But there are some countries who can increase production on the margins. Russia could increase production and put on the market, especially if they lifted the sanctions, right? That could add another million, maybe 1.5 million barrels of fuel and refined fuels on the market. Venezuela could also increase within the next 6 months another 500,000. It's not much, but that's because their infrastructure is so bad. It also needs large investment. So there are ways to get some more on the market. The United States could also put more petroleum on the market. That is a possibility. At these current prices, I could see the drilling market happening, and that could increase maybe by another 800,000 barrels a day out of the United States. So you add that all together, and we're probably only short about 3 to 4 million barrels of oil per day. So the prices will still be high, but at least they won't be. Yeah, at least they won't be exorbitantly high, right? Yeah, so that's the thing. Because right now, Saudi Arabia is now using its pipeline to the Red Sea, and it's estimated that they could pump almost 40% to 50% of their current supply, what they're pumping before, through that pipeline. My guess is what we're going to see after this conflict, there are going to be more pipelines built crossing the Arabian Peninsula to avoid the Strait of Hormuz.
Iran obviously has a stake in ensuring that it can get its own energy out. As far as I understand, it's doing that with oil. You're not a military strategist, as far as I know, but do you think there are any red lines on either side when it comes to energy? Or are we starting to see that come out now after this strike?
I mean, yeah, it seems like there are no red lines that are going after energy. What I'm most worried about is, energy is related to everything. If the electric power goes out, this is going to affect everything in Iran, right? I mean, you'll see people with diesel generators to put them on. And let's say that affects like other generation assets throughout. But the one thing they haven't touched, which is what everyone's been hoping that they don't, is the desalinization plants. So if Iran went after the desalinization plants, which support in most of these countries 90 to 100% of all their drinking water, we would have a massive humanitarian crisis in the Gulf. Iran itself already has water scarcity issues, right? They also rely on this energy to provide as much water as they need, and they don't have enough. So that is the one thing I am worried about, is as this spirals out of control, that the water infrastructure doesn't get hit.
We've also heard a lot about Karg Island, which is this island off the coast of Iran, which seems to be a kind of depot and transit point for oil exports out of Iran. Is it true that if that were hit in terms of the oil infrastructure, and to clarify, it has been hit in terms of what the U.S. has called military infrastructure there, but the oil infrastructure, as far as I understand it, has not been hit. How serious would that be if Iran was no longer in a position to export oil, both for Iran but also for global supplies? It's a major supplier.
It would be, and it more negatively affect Iran and China than probably other players in the region, because they were exporting most of their oil to China and some to India. And that's where they got their revenue source. But remember, because of the sanctions, they weren't able to export much. But that's where they got the bulk of their revenue for the government.
Let's have a look at what Qatar had to say about the attacks today, and not just on its oil fields, on its oil fields, to be clear, but on the Iranian gas fields that we believe were attacked by Israeli strikes. Here's its foreign ministry spokesperson saying the Israeli targeting of facilities linked to Iran's South Pars field, an extension of Qatar's North field, is a dangerous and irresponsible step amid the current military escalation in the region. Qatar's seeing consequences there to its own facilities, but of course, LNG isn't really being processed right now, as far as I understand. Are we, however, seeing the potential long-term destruction of production capability in this region? Or is it just a matter of, these facilities can be rebuilt, but it could take a lot of time?
They could be rebuilt, but it'll take 6 months to a year, depending on the damage. Now, we don't know how damaged the facilities are in Qatar. Also reported today, we still need verification, was that the Iranians said that they targeted Bahrain's natural gas assets as well, their LNG facilities. So we would have to see what the damage and the extent of that damage is. Right. I mean, again, right now, neither Bahrain nor Qatar are exporting any LNG. But if the things ever calm down, they'd want to be in a position where they could begin those exports.
I want to start to slowly wrap up our conversation, maybe with a step back for our viewers. Help us understand how important is energy for this region in terms of its development and its future, I would assume.
I mean, most of these countries are completely dependent upon energy exports. So much so, I mean, that many of them have been trying to diversify, right? Dubai has, and the United Arab Emirates realized long ago that they needed to diversify their economy beyond just energy, mainly because of the volatility of the oil and gas market. It's a commodity. It goes up and it goes down. And when it goes down, there's no more money. And so countries have been trying to diversify. Saudi Arabia has been trying to diversify its economy as well outside of oil and gas. And that's where potential growth can happen. But still, even today, most of these countries are quite heavily reliant, their economies, on oil and gas. I mean, look at Kuwait. Kuwait, that's all they have. So and they're the most exposed because they have no pipeline capability to get their oil and gas out, given how small the country is. So without exports soon, within a couple of months, they'll be running out of their reserves in the country, maybe economically going through a recession.
Shon, we've talked a lot about the wealth that the energy generates for this region, fossil fuel energy, and what these attacks can mean for that. I want to wrap up with a look at the humanitarian aspects of attacking energy infrastructure. French President Emmanuel Macron tweeting this after a phone call with President Trump and the Emir of Qatar. It's in our common interest to implement without delay a moratorium on strikes targeting civilian infrastructure, particularly energy and water supply facilities. You mentioned, of course, Shon, the desalination plants, civilian populations and their essential needs, as well as the security of energy supplies, must be protected from military escalation. And of course, we cover a lot the war in Ukraine and the fact that Russia has targeted Ukrainian energy infrastructure there as well. One final question. I look at these attacks and think this could even heighten the stakes of the war for the U.S., Israel, and Gulf countries. If Iran can sit and threaten energy supplies, provoked or unprovoked by similar attacks, then it seems to me that almost an outcome has to be more clearly positive for those who started the war. Otherwise, they feel like this would continue to be threatened. Would you agree that, this is the risk of a war involving energy from the beginning for this region, which is so heavily dependent on it, that the stakes are automatically higher?
Oh, they are absolutely higher. And the whole risk of these attacks was that this whole thing could spiral out of control. And we don't know whether it is going to spiral out of control. Is this the escalation to the de-escalation point, or is it actually spiraling? I don't know. I think what this whole thing has brought to mind, though, is the importance of energy security. I mean, it already became apparent in October of 2022 with the Ukraine invasion, which happened through Europe, is that countries need to figure out their energy security, right? We need to be able to be self-reliant in their energy needs and not reliant upon foreign countries. We're seeing this again right now out of the Middle East. And so this is the big question I believe that policymakers should be asking us: how do we increase our energy security, right? I mean, the Netherlands sits on a huge gas field that they shut down. This might be a good time to start it again, right? Or there's this aspects of nuclear power. There's the aspect of renewables. What can we do to become more energy secure? So I hope that this is one of the biggest takeaways from this, because this is not going to be the last of the geopolitical conflicts that we see.
All right, that's Shon Hiatt of the USC Marshall School of Business. Shon, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, what do you think about this targeting of energy facilities, in this case from Israel? Or is Iran successfully broadening and extending the war? Do those nations targeted by Iran need to respond directly or pressure Israel and the U.S.? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you like this video, please do hit that like button. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. From all of us here, thanks for watching.